Mere Conservatism.
David Perry, and I'm Cleve Walker, and this is Mere Conservatism.
You and I, Cleve, I think we agree that Christmas is a year-round celebration.
Agreed. And as a matter of fact, I'm one of those people who when Christmas comes, I celebrate it for at least a couple of weeks after it's been here. Well into the new year, I'm still celebrating.
You got at least 12 days of Christmas.
Yeah, why not? And if ever there was a need for hope,
yes,
I think we're living in that time.
Mm-hmm. And we need that reminder.
Again, our conservatism is illuminated, inspired, and informed by our faith. So the only reason that we're not talking about these issues in some of the more hopeless terms that I'm hearing on a lot of the programs is because no matter what happens, God for us is always the X factor in everything, even the things that seem to be impossible. So just tossing it out there.
Yeah, and our faith in God guides us in how we and our attitudes and our beliefs, and we strongly believe that when we apply that biblical worldview to politics, it comes out conservative.
I've always felt that as goes the faith community, the church, so goes our nation. And I believe that many of the problems that we're having are the result of the faith community perhaps not doing what God wants us to do. And I believe that many of the blessings this nation has enjoyed over the years has been a result of the faithfulness of the faith community. So there's that too. That's a dimension I like to toss in there. Well, David, finally, Congress broke through that long-standing political gridlock.
Finally, what would we do with without our betters, without our superiors in Congress? Oh my goodness, they're just wonderful, aren't they?
Well, this new COVID relief package, this massive tax and spending package, supposedly supposed to provide economic relief, is out there, and boy, oh my goodness. President Trump, this past Tuesday, was one of the first to really rail out against the bill. Here's what he said.
Congress found plenty of money for foreign countries, lobbyists, and special interests while sending the bare minimum to the American people who need it. It wasn't their fault. It was China's fault.
Now, he went on his Twitter page, by the way, to do that, which I thought was kind of cool.
As far as the bare minimum to the American people, I don't know about that. I'm not 100% sure. I do think that it's odd. A lot of the foreign aid that is in the bill. Now, not all of the foreign aid that you hear about is actually in the coronavirus bill. They passed another bill, a defense bill, along with it. So some of that you might be hearing passed together might be in a separate bill, but there is some stuff in the coronavirus bill that goes to other countries and does strange things. Even certain organizations in the U.S. that probably don't need to be getting it. The coronavirus bill ought to be unemployment benefits extended, small business loans, and possibly direct payments. Those are the types of things that should be in there.
And
that's it.
But especially small business, who are getting creamed. The larger businesses are going to make it through this. But I've heard figures as much as 1 out of every 3 or 4 small businesses are closing their doors as a result of this. So to me, if you're going to do anything by way of a stimulus, then again, through no fault of their own, these businesses are having to fold. Those are the ones who should be getting the aid. But even before we get to that, Rand Paul brings out his whole opinion about the thing. And
we know what Rand Paul thinks about stuff like this.
And he gave I don't know if you heard on the floor, his remarks that he gave about it. And he made some great points. He especially rebuked his fellow Republican conservatives for being able to shed their conservatism for this monstrosity of a bill. And even though he agrees with President Trump about how bad it is, he says, okay, because Trump wants to make it 2,000. And he says, here's the problem with that.
He was on a rant, and so am I. He was unhappy with all the spending to Pakistan and Sudan and all these far-flung places where we aren't taking care of our own. The problem is if we were to get more money to Americans, we would add it on top.
So what he's saying is, this thing is already bloated as it is. He went on to say he felt like it was going to cause our dollar to eventually fail.
Yeah. He's saying you're not going to redirect it from Pakistan. All you're going to do is add money on top of it. And
that needs to be cut out. The pork
why is that in a U.S. coronavirus relief bill?
For two reasons, David, and you know this. This is the way business is done. Whenever there's a project or a bill that's passed, you try to tack, that's a you. The legislators try to tack as much pork as they can. Sometimes it's for their own individual constituencies. Other times it's for groups that they are in a league to or owed to. And this is the way it's always done. Now, it shouldn't be. There should be something, and I don't know why there isn't, like a line item veto where the president or whoever should be able to say, I'm not going to approve that. I'll approve this part of the bill. I'm not going to approve that.
And one reason that Congress does this is because is to save their own skin.
Oh, yeah.
In a way, because they want to be able to say, well, I had to vote for it because it had so much good stuff in it. I'm sorry about that weird aid to Pakistan in there. Yeah, that was really bad, but there's so much good stuff in it, guys. I just had to vote for it. They do this together. They pack it together so that they can insulate themselves from the blowback of this terrible spending.
Well, and here's the thing, and the math has been done on this by others besides myself, but they said based upon the current way it stands now during the time of this broadcast, they're talking about trying to go back and amend it. But based upon the way it was initially rolled out, we're talking about 20% of the funds from all of this going to actual Americans and American interest, and the rest to totally different things, even like a fish hatchery.
That's frustrating.
And they got a project and they're like counting a certain variety of species in that. So we're talking about maybe a government job or two.
Well, and here's a side note and something to think about. When there is massive amounts of unemployment money that goes to people receiving unemployment benefits, no doubt it's all going to be administrated poorly. That's a given because it's the government. But does it not strike you as strange that the entire country is basically subsidizing California and New York's COVID policies? And the reason I say that is because in Georgia, where I live, pretty much everything is open. Pretty much everything is open. Now, some staffs might be smaller, so some people might be getting unemployment if they need it because of downsizing and things like that. But in a lot of places in California, New York, they're completely shut down. And they have a lot of the unemployed in states with the heavy shutdown orders. We're not dealing with that in Georgia and South Carolina and Florida the same way. So why am I footing the bill for California's draconian shutdown laws?
And it goes beyond the shutdown too, David, because what New York and California are hoping to do is by blending the chaos caused by their shutdown with their prior bad policies and high spending and the debts they were owed, they can blur the line between stuff that came about as a result of their bloated mismanagement even before the pandemic and blend it with the pandemic funding, and they can bail themselves out of their own fiscal irresponsibility.
It frustrates me a little bit that some of this could be viewed as a California bailout because of that. And that's the best thing that we can do is open the economy. And in a lot of states in the country, we've done that to the best we can. Now, look, restaurants in Georgia are, for the most part, open. Some of them are still not doing dine-in. They're doing takeout. Have you been to a Chick-fil-A lately? I mean, the cars are wrapped around the building twice because everybody's going through the drive-through. They're doing fine, okay, as far as having business, and they're not having to lay people off and stuff like that. But a lot of places in California, they have done away with outdoor dining. Some places just may not have the ability to do enough takeout to stay afloat. And this is why unemployment is so bad in some places. Other states, unemployment really isn't terrible. Anyway, I say all that to say the bill is a necessary evil, probably, just like the first one was, is government spending. is not good. We don't have the money. You called it, I think, a tax and spend. Yeah. It's actually just a borrow and spend. Taxes have nothing to do. There's no relationship between taxes and funding the government. There just isn't. Because if there was, then the amount the government spent would fluctuate based on tax revenue. That isn't the case. It just goes up and up. It's an opportunity here for the government just to do another terrible omnibus bill and lump everything together, take no responsibility for it, and it's going to be poorly administrated, and it's sad that this is where we're at.
But in a way, it is still tax and spend to this extent. The bill will come due, and the government's answer, especially under a Biden administration, will be to increase taxes. So they will justify.
Their answer is going to be that. Yeah.
So that's in there now.
Or like Rand says, it's going to mess up the currency.
Yep.
You have to devalue the dollar so that your debt isn't so bad.
There you go.
Print money, those types of things. That's another way you can pay off debt.
Hyperinflation and whatnot. Now, the good thing about this is this bill is so bad, David, that it has bipartisan opposition. I mean, you even got AOC and people of her ilk who are against this bill for different reasons than me and you. But AOC brought out a great point, by the way. She said, I can't read this bill in the amount of time it takes to actually look and see what's in this thing. She said that.
Yeah. She said, hey, I've got 2 hours to look at it, and it's too big.
Well, another one, a Democrat who I can easily tolerate is Tulsi Gabbard. And Congresswoman Gabbard was on Fox News at night, and she says she doesn't like it because it really isn't going to help the people who most need help.
To see this bill pass through Congress that is touted as this great COVID relief bill and say, hey, here, you get $600, while they see hundreds of billions of dollars going to, corporate special interests, military-industrial complex, foreign countries. It is absolutely offensive, and Congress does need to come back in and fix this.
So, even Democrats, now again, for different reasons, are saying this bill is bad, it's stupid, it's awful. And I do agree with Tulsi, it really doesn't help. The Americans like it should.
To be technical about it, people are getting more than $600 if they're getting unemployment benefits and increased. If they're unemployed, if they're affected by the coronavirus in that way, they're getting lots of extra benefits that way and small business relief and stuff like that. So, I mean, to be honestly, Cleve, I question whether or not the blanket payment to every person is even the right thing to do in a bill because some people have been completely unaffected. There are some people that are basically unaffected at all by the shutdowns because they're essential workers or whatever, their industry is still thriving and stuff like that. So why would they get a $600 check? They're still working as normal. That's a lot of money that could be given to people who are actually out of work or something like that. Her point about all of it, so much of it going to special interests in foreign countries is a good one. But you're only getting $600 is not that's not exactly correct.
Well, I guess her point is this, though. If you compare it to the proportion of what's being spent to support other things, it's terrible. Okay,
hard to argue with that.
It's awful. And what Trump is saying, hey, listen, if you want to make it a stimulus, a real stimulus, make it $2,000. Make it $1,000 for individuals, $2,000 for a couple, or whatever. And now, again, I'm not in favor of the government just doling out this money because I believe it's money we don't have. But even if you're going to be consistent and say, I want to make a big jump or a stimulus where people are going to take this and say, hey, I'm going to start buying some goods, durable goods or whatever, get the economy going strong, that would be something that you'd have to think about doing. But the point being is, it's showing again in stark relief what the Democrats are all about, because Nancy Pelosi was first saying how great this bill was and how $600 is plenty for citizens, and now she's saying, no, I never thought that was enough, and I do hope that we do go get this thing back in there and $2,000. Yes, that sounds wonderful.
Well, 2 months ago, or it was right before the election, she refused to do a bill that was twice the size.
Right.
So because she didn't want to do anything that might, we talked about this on the podcast. She didn't want to do anything that might help President Trump's election chances.
And now that comes out really in, like I said, in stark relief. Yeah. That was the only reason.
That was almost was it exactly twice as big as this?
It was much bigger. I don't know if it was twice.
It was quite a bit bigger than this one. And she said no, she wouldn't even negotiate on that. So, I mean,
that sounds so cynical, but it's what we're saying, what people have said about her. She's saying, I don't care if it means additional suffering. That's a good thing if it's tied to President Trump and it impacts his election chances. She doesn't care about people suffering if it produces the results and the narrative that the Democrats have always wanted. And say
she's so detached from that. She can't imagine. She can't relate to people who are having a tough time. She can't.
Can any progressive Democrat like her imagine that? Because
very few of them. All
of these governors, and they're still doing it. They caught another one who was going on a trip for the holidays. I can't remember her name now, but
was it Burks? Deborah Burks?
No,
got
he was not a governor, but she got caught too.
Yeah.
Which I thought she was a nice person, but it was still hypocrisy.
Yeah.
But we still have these people doing this while they're telling everybody else, you gotta shelter in, you gotta stay home, you gotta cancel Christmas, and then they're not doing it. Again, I think this is a wonderful chance to point out the difference between the conservative viewpoint, which says, no, we want people to be able to feed their families. I don't want people to be in a position where they need a handout. I want them to be able to do what they have set up their businesses to do.
Yeah. In other words, government should get out of people's way.
Yeah.
Let people make their own decisions, be responsible for their own selves, and take care of their family.
We should have as little of government involvement in our lives as possible. That's the very essence of what we mean by conservatism. We're not saying there's no place for government, and we're not saying that this pandemic, which to me was caused by government, the government does not have a responsibility for many, especially the business who are struggling. But we don't want the government involved in our lives. We don't. We really don't.
Do you think we have any shot, Cleve, at fixing the way Congress does these bills? Are we going to have omnibus bills for the rest of our lives? Do we have a chance at all of reining this back into a normal thing where they can have a bill with one issue in it and vote on it up or down and move on to the next? Because this omnibus stuff is terrible.
It is and always has been. We have only one shot. Okay, well, two shots. If you're a believer like we are, we believe in prayer. Okay, we do. But the other shot is this, and this leads into the next story we're going to deal with. The problem is, will we ever have another honest election again? Now, a growing number of House Republicans say they're going to challenge the results of the presidential election more and more when Congress meets to certify the Electoral College results on January the 6th. One of them is your Republican Congressman, Georgia Congressman Jody Hice. He was on Fox's The Story with Martha McCallum, and he said that he's leading an objection to Georgia's electors in an effort to reverse the effects of what he calls election fraud.
It all starts with the illegal activities of our Secretary of State creating election law for which he has no jurisdiction or authority to do. That's left to our state legislatures, and he totally bypassed them. Then you have massive invitations, really, for voter fraud through sending invitations for absentee ballots. Ends up being 1.3 million voters in Georgia.
By the way, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, and by now, by the time this broadcast is finished, they did a certification signature thing to the ballots. And we should know something from that recently, too, because that's one of the things that we've have been asking for. So there is a growing movement when it comes down to certification of electors that there's going to be a stand taken.
This is really not good. I mean, we need to know the truth, obviously. That's good. What's bad is, Cleve, this shows that faith in our elections is broken.
Yes.
And note what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that if they do this, it's going to shatter faith in our elections.
No, it's broken now.
That's already happened.
Yes.
This happening is proof that is the case. There's about half of this country thinks that you can't count on it.
Right.
And last time, 4 years ago, the other half thought so.
But even some Democrats, I think the polls showed like 20% say
have questions.
Yeah, that the election was probably not on the up and up. My point is, this is why I say, and I don't want to see this kind of thing happen. What he's talking about, I really don't, because I don't know what all of it's going to entail. But the point is, I don't believe we have a choice not to do nothing. At this juncture, if we say, okay, they got this one, okay, it's over, and we just basically lie down and hope we can do better or catch them at the next time, I don't believe that happens. And I believe the problems you and I are talking about, these systemic problems of bloated bills, omnibus spending, out of control things, will only continue because if we can't get them out of there by a rightly done election, David, we can't change things. Mm-hmm. It cannot happen.
Yeah.
And so this fight that President Trump is taking, I think sometimes it's been painted, even by someone our size, as just as it's ego talking, and the fact that he just feels like he deserves another term. It's so much bigger than that. If we let this go without a fight, without throwing light on this, without standing up and stirring up whatever kind of legal, constitutional ruckus we can, again, I qualify that, then we deserve what we get, which will be, from that point forward, every election will be a questionable election. And if the Democrats did it once and got away with it, we know they will do it again.
Well, there might need to be a few special counsels appointed before Trump leaves office.
Not according to Bill Barr. He's disappointed me on that.
I think that's a mistake.
I agree.
There needs to be a special counsel at the very least on Hunter Biden. That's something we haven't mentioned here, but that needs to be done. And this election stuff, we might need one on it too, because there isn't enough time between the election and the inauguration to suss all this out and to make sure that we know exactly what happened. There are still questions out there, and unfortunately, there hasn't been enough time. Sometimes legal battles like this take years.
Oh yes.
So,
well, and there's this. Do you believe that, and even though Biden has indicated this, that he would not touch Justice Department and he would remain aloof? Do you believe under a Biden administration?
I believe that he will remain aloof.
Okay,
if you put it that way.
I guess what I'm trying to say. Do you believe that there would be a thorough investigation into his son under the auspices of his Justice Department?
They're not going to let that happen.
No, and anybody who thinks that that's possible is kidding themselves. I mean, if Biden is the president and over the executive branch and whatnot, you can kiss any more investigation or any serious investigation of Hunter Biden. They may slap him on the wrist for some type of tax violation, but they won't let it go any further than that. I guarantee you.
Yeah, definitely. And Cleve, there's so many things that I would like to see happen that when things happen the way they do, like Bill Barr refusing to consider appointing special counsels in these situations, it makes me a little sad.
Yeah.
Because, I feel like in some of these cases, this is our chance.
Our only chance. As a matter of fact, now, Bill Barr, I still think he's a good man. I think that he's trying to make sure that his department is not politicized, but I believe he's going through the other extreme to do that. I think he's bending over far too far in the other direction.
I'm surprised at him for that. I wouldn't think that he would do that.
The only reason I hate to say this, but I think that Trump has ticked him off too, personally, and I had put Barr kind of above that.
Trump has put him, and he tends to put his people in a bad situation because Trump talks too much.
Yeah.
And so then when Bill Barr does something that Trump has been talking about, it makes it look like he's Trump's lapdog, and he probably doesn't want to do that.
Bill Barr hates that. Well, U.S. President-elect Joe Biden did have some compliments for Trump. Believe it or not, he said he does believe that warp speed was a good thing, and it really helped accomplish things. As a matter of fact, Dr. Fauci was agreeing with him on that. He was on Fox, Bill Hemmer, and here's what Fauci had to say about warp speed and the success of the Trump administration doing it.
President-elect Biden was correct in giving credit to the Trump administration for Operation Warp Speed. Operation Warp Speed will go down historically as a highly successful endeavor, which allowed us to do things with regard to the timing of it and the effectiveness of it in a way that a few years ago people never would have imagined.
It's a masterstroke by the Trump administration. Absolutely amazing.
We might end up having 3 vaccines by the end of this year, to tell you the truth. There's one that's on the fast track for approval.
And I think that people will start to split up based on which vaccine they get and like have wars against each other. Like, we're Moderna people. No, we're Pfizer people, man. You guys stink. This is the next civil war. It's which vaccine you got.
You were making a point about the CDC, though, and I want you to bring out.
So I just wanted to say the CDC has this panel that gets together and they make they vote, they discuss, they make a recommendation based on how the vaccine is going to be administered to people. States have the final say. Also, the CDC director gets to either accept their recommendation or not. But here's the thing. I don't want people to think that the CDC is or other government organizations are purely science-driven and that they're not influenced by culture and politics and stuff like that.
No, they're paragons of virtue and objectivity.
So this is for the follow the science crowd, okay?
Okay.
The people who have been treating the CDC like they're preaching the gospel, that you should do exactly what the CDC says. You need to be careful because these organizations are influenced by politics. I read this article in the New York Times. But I read this about what the committee was saying about their COVID-19 vaccine recommendations. It says this: historically, the committee relied on scientific evidence to inform its decisions. But now the members are weighing social justice concerns as well. Actually, this is a quote from a different person. It says, "To me, the issue of ethics clearly favors the essential worker group because of the high proportion of minority, low-income, and low-education workers among essential workers." Now, Cleve, that's not super science-y. Basically, what they're saying is that essential workers should be at the front of the line because more of them are black. And this article goes on and on about how older people are mostly white. And so they shouldn't get the vaccine first because they're white.
My goodness gracious.
Which, by the way,
my goodness,
is going to result in more death. There's so many problems with this.
Oh, my.
One of them is the idea that they see people as groups. So they're going to take the 75 and older crowd, put them all in a group and set them to the side. And you know what? There are black 75-year-olds that are in that group that will now die because they didn't get the vaccine, but a 30-year-old person who works at a grocery store is going to get the vaccine, and they were never at risk of dying of this thing. That that death is okay as long as they can even the playing field a little bit with how these things are done. That's not science, folks.
Not at all.
That is social justice warrior garbage. Okay, it's terrible. Now the CDC is not going to do it. They're not going to take that recommendation. I promise you. But I just want to tell you that these are the types of people that are informing decisions at the CDC.
And don't believe those type pressures don't have an impact though on decisions by the CDC.
And we need to know that these organizations aren't just pure as the driven snow and driven by science. It's not the case. We need to be on guard about this stuff.
There's still hope ahead. Don't give up, but we still have a ways to go. David, where can folks hear this broadcasting?
You can hear the podcast on Apple Podcasts, the app on your phone. You can hear on Facebook as well as YouTube.
We do hope you had a Merry Christmas and a wonderful New Year on the way.